We do a lot here on the property to reduce the amount of pests that infect our apples, but having some drop due to pest infestation is inevitable. Fallen apples are part of the natural life cycle of codling moth and apple maggots. The eggs of the larva that is laid inside these apples requires the apple to drop in order for it to go from a larva to a pupa and complete its life cycle. But we can disrupt that life cycle when we A, either pick up apples by hand, or B, let them be grazed by our farm helpers. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I've got a lot of critters on the farm that will happily graze fallen apples. The geese actually do a wonderful job for us. I don't have a set orchard space where I just unleash geese and they can walk through. Rather, they free range, which is perfect because my fruiting trees are randomly sprinkled throughout the property. So the geese come through, but also the sheep love to clean up fallen fruit. So if I have a moment and am out to supervise them while free ranging, they'll have at the apples that drop as well. If it comes down to it and the geese aren't doing a good job and the sheep haven't cleared any of the fallen apples, I can collect what I need and take them to the horses. The moth lays her eggs on the fruit tree. What ends up happening is the larva hatches and it infects the fruit. When the tree, through its natural means, eliminates that fruit and drops it, the larvae come out of the apple, go into the soil, and complete the next life cycle stage, which is turning into a pupa. When we pick up the fallen apples, we are disrupting that life cycle. But also what we're doing is we're eliminating fallen apples, which will then harbor disease-like pathogens in our soil that can overwinter and come back and infect the tree the following year. Different types of rot, almost like a tomato blight, can infect your tree and successfully overwinter. When we get rid of the fallen apple, we're eliminating those chances of having that pathogen be able to thrive in our soil and come back and infect the tree year after year. The other thing that we're doing is we're reducing the amount of stinging insects that visit the area. If you've ever walked through an orchard to have it smell like fermentation, like apple cider vinegar, that's because there's fallen apples on the ground that are fermenting. That fermentation scent attracts stinging insects like wasps and hornets. While normally we would want those things to be visiting our guild or our tree because they would feed on annoying insects that affect our tree, they are not doing that when they're feeding on apples instead. So what we want to do is reduce stinging insects for our own safety and comfort, especially if you have kids and pets on the farm, but also because we just don't want to have them feeding on fallen fruit that our animals are then going to come through and try to ingest. Geese are incredibly thorough grazers in the orchard area. They are so good at going through, picking up the apples, and eliminating fallen fruit. They actually have no problem chewing the fruit, which is kind of surprising since they don't have teeth, but they have serrated tongues and beaks that help them to chew up that fruit nicely. Also, obviously, as they graze, they can forage on extra grassy growth, weeds, but also they're dropping their droppings, which is going to give the tree fertilizer, along with any guild members that might be around the fruiting tree. We talk a lot about apples, but also with other fallen fruit from other fruiting trees like pears, our animals can be helpful. This 100-year-old plus pear tree is in one of the horse pastures. We get a lot of fruit off of it, but all fallen crops are dropped and eaten and grazed by the horses. Apples are a totally nutritious and healthy snack for animals. The thing we want to be careful of is making sure they don't eat too many. Many people might not be aware that the seeds of the apple contain a bit of cyanide. And so when you start letting horses graze uncontrollably on apples, they're going to be ingesting more and more cyanide. So just be sure to keep an eye out and use discretion when letting your animals graze on fallen fruit. It's something crazy like 400 apples would need to be eaten in order for that cyanide to kick in.